people have to know what your business stands for, because that adds a component that you cannot buy with advertising. It's called referability.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
What's up, Remarkables? Hey, it's Dr. Stephen Franson. I'm super excited to bring to you a good friend of mine and a business guru, somebody who's been around the chiropractic space for a long time and certainly been developing his business chops over the last couple of decades. This is my friend, Rick Sapio. Rick, say hi, brother.
Hey, Stephen, thank you for having me. Welcome, everybody. I hope to take you on a ride.
Oh, man, I'm psyched for the ride we're going to go on. We're going to have a conversation about optimizing your business for sale. We're going to have an exit strategy conversation. And, you know, Rick, I'm going to let you tell your background, your story a little bit, just do a little thumbnail sketch so they know who they're talking to. And then we're going to get after it. We're going to drill down on how to ready yourself, ready your business, ready your practice for an optimal exit, whether that means you're trying to exit in the next 2-3 years, or maybe 23 years. You know, the old expression, the best time to plant an oak tree is 50 years ago. The next best time is to plant one today. So Dr. Rick, see, there it is right there, right away. Dr. Rick is going to help us plant that oak tree today. So Rick, why don't you give us a bit of your background?
It's funny. I'm an engineer. So when I go to Italy, I'm an Italian citizen. They call me Ingegnere Sapio, which they consider a doctor. So no, I'm not a chiropractor. So for those that don't want to hear from a non-chiropractor, you're missing out.
That's right.
Background, I'll go back early. So I was the 7th of 9 kids and had a really rough childhood. I lived in North Jersey. I grew up in an Italian neighborhood. I was born in 1963. And when I was 11, my dad came home and announced to the family that he had incurable cancer, and the doctors had given him 6 weeks to live. And I watched, you know, my best friend die right before me. He ended up living 2.5. He ended up living 2.5 years, not 6 weeks as they predicted. But the ironic thing was we didn't have any money, and basically he said to the kids, "Look, you're going to have to be resourceful. You're going to have to fend for yourself." And it gave us time. 2.5 years was a long time. And ironically, after he died, I was 13. All my siblings eventually got married, and we have over 300 years of marriage with no divorces. And what makes that more remarkable, to use your word, is after my dad died, my mother had a massive nervous breakdown and she never recovered. And so I basically had really no parental guidance. I didn't have a lot of relatives. It's funny, when somebody dies, nobody comes around. The house was it was very busy when my dad was alive, and then it was empty. And I just remember that his challenge to us to be resourceful. I often say today that entrepreneurship saved my life. And so I did whatever I could possibly do: fix cars, fix bicycles, rake lawns, deliver the New York Daily News for 2 years. 200 people, and it dropped on your doorstep at 5 a.m. and it had to be delivered by 6. I can't even imagine telling a kid in 6th grade to do that, but we didn't think like that in those days. So the seed was planted to be an entrepreneur. And I had a mentor who told me when I was 12, I believe, he said, "I'm an engineer. If you get an engineering degree, you could be whatever you want. It'll change your brain to think about process." And so whenever anybody asked me after that age, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" and I would say, "I don't know." But my mentor told me if I get an engineering degree, I could be a doctor or a lawyer. I could work on Wall Street. I could be a business person because it'll train my brain to think. And so I did pursue that. And it's interesting how providence moves when you're committed to something. There's an old saying that says, if you want something bad enough, the universe will conspire to bring it to you. And so I got lucky. Rutgers was giving engineering degree scholarships at the time, and I got one. And it was one of those good news, bad news things, because I had to work full time through college, and it was brutal that engineering load was absolutely brutal. Every friend I made freshman year failed out, every single one. So, I don't know if they do that these days. They probably pamper everyone. They don't
No,
fail
they
kids out.
absolutely do. And I'll go back 30 years, and I can remember I was, if there was 3 or 4 roommates that we had, and I was pre-med, and everybody's like, "Oh, wow, you're pre-med." And I was like, "It's nothing compared to engineering." And 2 of my roommates were engineers, and I was like, that was a challenging undergrad. It was like pre-med was a piece of cake compared to what these guys are going through.
Yeah, and then it gets harder in med school. But anyway, so I was fortunate. Wall Street was hiring engineers. And so, in my mid-20s, I got lucky again working on some really big deals. I got involved in transactions in which we would buy large bankrupt public companies, names that you would know, and we would buy the bonds of those companies, and I would raise capital, and I was on the creditor committee. And so I remember we worked on the Macy's deal. We did a lot of them, but Macy's was one in which, I had to go out and raise capital. We raised like $300 or $400 million. We bought the bonds. Then we had to go through the court. And so I just got to see how transactions work from an early age. So that was in the late 80s. And then I started my company, which I still have, in 1994. So we're almost 30 years old. And ironically, I'm still in the same office that we started the company in all those years ago. And it was from the outset, we started to be a holding company. I loved what Warren Buffett was doing with Berkshire Hathaway. And I thought, if I had a holding company, it's very simple. And so from that holding company structure, we've just been doing deals for over 30 years. And with a focus on helping large companies exit. So I've been through a lot of transactions, got a lot of scars, and I'm at the prime of my life. I feel good. I have a tremendous amount of energy. I was on a flight last night, Stephen. I didn't tell you. It was supposed to land at midnight. It actually landed at 3:09 a.m. I didn't get to my house till 4 a.m. and I had a 6:30 a.m. breakfast. So I probably need an adjustment.
No sleep for the weary. All right. So here's my takeaway, what I heard so far. So your origin story reminds me of this morning. I heard Johnny Cash's great song, Boy Named Sue. And I'm sure you know that song, but the whole idea around the boy named Sue was the guy, he meets up with his father after 25 years of defending himself in his honor after growing up as a kid named Sue. His father wasn't around, and he finally finds the father in a bar and gets into a big fight with him. And at the end of it, he's like, "Listen, I knew I wasn't going to be around for you. So I named you Sue. So I knew you'd have to learn how to fight and be tough." So your dad created a great deal of resilience with you. And I loved where you use the word resourcefulness. I took my son to see Tony Robbins when he turned 18. And I remember Tony saying something from the stage that really stuck with Sam, which is, it's not about your resources, it's about your resourcefulness. And I think that that's a phenomenal thing, because ultimately those two things is what it takes to be an entrepreneur. As you and I are both rabid entrepreneurs, and that's probably what brought us together.
What's insane, though, I do want to share something before you make that next point, is we've shifted from a culture, though, of resourcefulness to a culture of victimhood. And even wealthy, successful entrepreneurial parents, they're running around with a pillow under their kid's butt in case he falls down.
Not in the Franson house, and I guess, and not in the Sapio house.
No, but we're training kids to be victims.
Yeah.
The opposite of resourcefulness. And the culture is celebrating victimhood. I can be a bigger victim than you. And it's up to the parents to change that.
That's right. I just keep telling my kids that it's going to be easier for them to kick ass out there because of what they're up against. It's like all you have to do is be resourceful and you're going to be successful, and have the grit, that it takes to be an entrepreneur. Last thing I heard on that was your engineering background, just ingrained in you the appreciation for systems. And that's really the conversation that we'll end up in today, is talking about the systems associated with preparing a business for exit, right? So, but before we do that, let's talk a little bit about, how you and I met, 10 years ago in chiropractic through a mutual friend, Patch and Tempo. And just to give you some street chops for your exposure to chiropractic and understanding of the chiropractic business.
So you want me to tell that story about how
just quickly. Like how you and I know each other.
Yeah, so 2008, Patrick asked me to help him sell his business, which I did. We worked on it very closely. that led to us being on weekly calls. We started a weekly accountability group, which I got from a group of billionaires that I knew one of them. And he's like, you got to meet weekly. You've got to have accountability partners that hold you accountable. And Pat and I did that for 7 years. And after about a year and a half after we started, he's like, you've got to get these principles that you have inside your company into the chiropractic industry. So we created chiropractic finishing school. And I think over 1,000 docs went through it. Some of them, I talked to one last week who said it completely transformed their life.
Right.
So we took business principles from my company. There's 48 modules. And it's now called Business Finishing School. But that program, the origin was helping Patrick sell his company in 2008.
Yep.
So,
yep. Perfect
and
segue into our conversation, right? So ultimately, you have an appreciation for, I mean, it was not a chiropractic practice he was selling. I'm assuming I know which company you're talking about. But at the same time, you have an appreciation because having worked with so many chiropractors over the years, you understand this very special industry and these beautiful microcosms of business, right? So it's the classic entrepreneur, the classic, typically mom and pop shop, that owner operator that, we groom into a professionally managed business. That's the remarkable CEO process, but you understand the guts of what that means and what that looks like. So I think you're a perfect person to have a conversation with, because now you're specializing in exit and you have the exit concierge, right? So you have this program which you can speak to, which is an interesting, it's a new and a bigger idea. It's a great way to approach for much, much bigger deals, where I believe you said your threshold was 30 million, which you're going to take to $50 million deals. But still the principles and the concepts will definitely apply from a high level as to how you can increase your readiness and ultimately the enterprise value, right?
Yeah, and they go hand in hand. I remember back in 2009, I was speaking to about 1,000 people. Patrick put me in front of a bunch of chiropractors, and they liked me because I was so honest. And I said this to them, which I'm going to say to you and your audience right now. If you think about the two guys named Steve and Steve with no business experience, I think one was 19 and one was 23 when they started at Apple Computer. Today that company's worth $3 trillion. But the ironic thing is they were two people with passion that started a company. And that passion, which led to purpose, which led to catalyzing events. I have done this TED talk on catalyzing statements. You can look it up. It's if you go to TEDx and my name, you can watch a 14-minute on that. But what I said to this crowd of chiropractors is, if you want to create value in your business right now, you could do it today, or you could wait 20 years to do it, but you're ultimately going to do it. Get your damn name off the door. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak did not call it Jobs and Wozniak. They called it Apple. And people would like have terror in their eyes, but I can't change the name. And the people that change their name have created so much value. Why is that important? Because what Steve and Steve did, and what I'm asking you as a listener to do, very first thing you do is you take your name off the door, because you want to separate the business from the person. Your employees or your potential chiropractors that work with you don't want to work for you. They want to work for an entity, and that entity has to be separate from you. It would be a much different ending if Apple was called Wozniak and Jobs. I guarantee you that.
Absolutely.
And then you always get the person that says, but what about Charles Schwab? I'm like, Charles Schwab worked his ass off, because you have to work so much harder, because people only want your hands to touch them if your name's on the door. If I were a chiropractor, I would call it World Domination Chiropractic. That's what I would call it, because my clients and patients are going to dominate the world, because they're going to be so healthy. And
no question.
It's a fundamental philosophy that if people can't accept that. So half the crowd was like, I hate this guy, Patrick.
Yep.
And half the crowd said, how can I sign up for your program?
Well, I was one of the guys cringing because we were Franson Family Chiropractic, of course. And I thought it was cute because it was Franson Family. It was my wife and I, and we were taking care of all these families, right? So I thought that made a lot of sense, but it made a lot of sense right up until my exit, when I recognized it's like, oh my gosh, this is very difficult to sell. But long before that, I recognized that because everybody wanted to see Franson when they came through the front door, and I had 39 associate doctors. So I spent 10 years building that up and 10 years unraveling myself from that. Never changed the name until the day we sold it, which they changed the name immediately. And what I learned from that is you're exactly right, because the coaching business is not called the Franson practice. It's called the remarkable practice, right? And we're very, very careful to make sure that it's not the Franson show, right? So that we're more like the Hall of Justice, which is a great, to your point, a great approach to make sure you separate the founder from the brand. It has to be a separate and distinct thing. What are your thoughts on like getting off of the accountability chart, right? So, or working your way off the organizational chart, working your way up through the ascensions from like the doctor who's on the tools on the table to the doctor that becomes the manager to the doctor that becomes the CEO, working on the business, not in the business, and then eventually working above the business as the investor trying to sell the business. It's a different lens through which to look at your practice. Your product is now your business, not chiropractic area.
Well, you have to we have something called the business frame, and it starts with what's the purpose of the business? That's step one, written out 5 words, not 20, just 5. And then what's the catalyzing statement that purpose relates to? So for example, there's so many examples, but when Gates started Microsoft, which became a massive company, as we all know, he said, we want to be the most recognizable software company in the world. That was the purpose. I don't know that that's a great purpose, but the company didn't initially succeed until he said the catalyzing statement, which that's what we call it today. But back then he just called it a mission, I'm sure. But a catalyzing statement is something that catalyzes people to want to do business with you. It catalyzes your employees to want to work for you, and it catalyzes potential partners and doctors to come. And for Gates, it was a computer on every desktop. He claims that statement got him 25,000 of the world's best engineers. A statement. Isn't that interesting?
That's right.
So you all have that opportunity, but then the next thing is, what are the values by which the business owner, you, will make decisions? And I call it values-based decision making. And so I'm just going to talk about 4 right now that are 4 primary to my company, and it helps with the exit. So you may have heard these, Stephen, I'm not sure, but simplicity, probability, leverage, and permanence. And so if you were from this point forward, you can even borrow my values. And I think everybody should have some version like that enables you. They do. Okay. But I would have them oriented around an exit. These are not the values on the door of your business. These are operating values from which you're going to make decisions. So simplicity means we're going to keep things as simple as possible. It is mind blurring to me how complicated people make their lives and their business. I don't get it. I really don't. I could tell you so many stories that I just look at people and I'm like, so you're commuting an hour to work and you're building a house an hour and 20 minutes from work on the other side of town? And like, why would you make that decision? But people don't use simplicity as a decision-making tool. So if you were, all of you, and I'm gonna do this really fast, if you use simplicity, probability, leverage, and permanence as a tool, you would run all your decisions through that. How is this really simple? How is what I'm about to do going to increase the probability that I hit my stated outcome? And in this case, your stated outcome is I want an exitable business. I want something that somebody could offer me money for and I could sell. Not today, but you're aiming for that. And you may say, I don't want to sell. But running a business that can exit easily is a hell of a lot more profitable to own.
More fun, easier, simpler, more profitable. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. And so simplicity, probability is a tough one as an operating value. And then the next one is leverage. All the decisions that we all make should be leveraging existing technology, existing relationships, existing geography, existing values. But we often make decisions, we don't even realize it because we met somebody and said, do this, and now you're running Facebook campaigns and you're wasting money. And you have to make decisions through the lens of leverage. And then the last one is, I added this about 7 years ago. And I really got influenced by Herb Kelleher, who said this to me. He said, we took 4 years to build the strategy of Southwest Airlines. and not one plane left the ground. But the biggest thing that we wanted my team to focus on was permanence. We wanted permanence as a value, which meant we're not going to start the company. We're not going to start flying planes until we had a permanent structure.
Yeah.
And I think
it's not first iteration and we'll change it later. This is what we're going to do.
Right. And so you have you said it earlier about, what do we want to be and how do we make decisions now? So when my wife and I first started having kids, we have 4 now, we created a permanent family structure, which was 35 pods of information. It was, here's our values, here's our wedding vows, here's what we want our family to look like, here's what we do at family meetings, here's the Sapio family way, and it sits on our dinner table. And it's called the family placement. But the point is, I said to my wife, it's going to be permanent. So it took us a year to finish it. Can they see? I keep it with me at all times. Is this a podcast where they can see, or they can
yeah, listen? we have this on YouTube, so they can see it for sure.
Yeah, I got it right here. I wasn't expecting to talk about it, but
no, I love that. I love the concept of creating this something that sits on the table. Yeah, that's beautiful.
So yeah, I just held it up. But anyway, the point is, permanence as a value. If you knew that you were going to change your marketing campaign, or change the way you hire people, or change the way you do anything in the business, like for example, come up with a new package that creates recurring revenue for the business, I would look at it from the perspective of, how could this be permanent? Because permanence creates ingrained structures, and Warren Buffett talks about it from the lens of, it creates a moat around your business.
Right.
And when you have a moat, people can't compete with you. But what happens is, before the moat is built, people change. There's nothing permanent. But when you look at the companies you love to interact with, the ones that have, you just like interacting with them, they're great companies. There's a lot of permanence about them. And I don't think people talk about this too much.
Yeah, I think people exhaust themselves with thinking that they need to be constantly evolving, and it's the next thing, and they're implementing the next thing. You hear it in their conversations, and there's so many distractions, and they have a tendency to just be chasing their tails by adding different things and going into the next iteration. And we should definitely be innovative for sure. We want to innovate and listen to the market and be aware, but there needs to be the majority of what you do and how you execute it, why you're doing it, how you do it, should have a permanence to it. So you're not half-assing things, knowing that, hey, don't worry, that's good enough for now, we're going to change it later. As a consumer, that's confusing. After 10 years, there's so much drift that people don't recognize you anymore. Like where you started is not where you are today. And, just like it creates this, I think, enormous market confusion if people don't know what they're going to walk into.
And there's a phenomenon that we're dealing with, especially with millennials, is this follow your bliss, do what makes you happy mentality, that they can't accept permanence as a value. But that's where all success comes from. Success comes from permanent. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I had to fire this employee relatively recently. And I said, every single thing you start, you don't finish. Like, what's going on with that? And he said, well, my mom always told me, do what makes you happy. And I said, did you quit every sport you ever started? He goes, yeah, how'd you know? He goes, yeah, I remember I was on the golf team.
Every instrument, every sport, every hobby, just dabbling.
Yep. And his mother was like, well, do what makes you happy. And ironically, all success comes not from doing what makes us happy, but from doing what we commit to, even when it's grueling and difficult. Right. I ran into a friend of mine once, and he said, I go, holy cow, you look like you lost weight. You lost 100 pounds. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't seen him in a while. I was at the gym. And I go, you must feel great. He goes, I hate coming to the gym, but I love the result. Right. And you see that in long-term marriages. It wasn't always happy, but unfortunately, we live in a society when we're not happy, we run, because we heard this bullshit called follow your bliss. Follow what you're committed to, put a permanence around it, make sure you honor your values, and don't change your values, because they're part of your DNA.
Of the Remarkable practice is consistency is the new intensity. So instead of just always be hustling and hard and grinding, be consistent. Be very consistent with showing up and how you show up, and with what you're actually. If you just can slay the dragon of inconsistency, just be consistent. So when I hear those values,
go ahead.
When I hear those values, I would think about, like, if I were going to buy your business and if I knew that those were the values, it would be very appealing to me. Like, all of those values would be something that I'd want to buy, because when people buy a business, what they're buying, in short, is like future profits, right? So they want to say, how predictable are my future profits? What is the potential here of this business? And of course, they're going to base that on the historical performance of the business. But when you're looking at something subjectively, and like, it's like, what am I doing here to mitigate my risk? And what am I willing to pay for this business? It's going to be based on what do I feel the future profits will be. And I think all four of those qualities would make me feel as though I was buying something that was stable and safe and secure. And that would be a very interesting positioning for me if I heard you say that.
Yeah. And you got to understand, when you're selling your business, which eventually all of you will, because you're all going to die, buyers are buying, you said it, but we like to call it a predictor machine. I want to know, when I put, an hour of time in, what is the outcome going to be when I buy this thing? People don't want to buy something that has any question marks. So the higher
right.
the price, is the higher prices for businesses that we sell are derived from the predictor machine being really accurate, and separately from the business being separate from owners.
That's right.
First thing I do when I take on a new client, our average exit's about 110 million these days. I separate the owners immediately from the business. The last thing buyers want is to buy you. And it's so hard for chiropractors to wrap their head around that, because
That's
they're
right.
so passionate about the business. And I'm like, you can still be passionate about your business without your name on the door. Like, but no, I've seen so many tears. I had to fire this one woman because she had a meeting. She started crying and ran out of the room. I can't take my name off the door. Well, ironically, this person took her name off the door, and she was trying to, it's a long story. I'm leaving out a lot of details. It was in the family. It was a chiropractic. Took her name off the door. And by changing the name to a really cool name, it started attracting better clients, different clients. So she was able to raise her prices. She was able to get sell more the care packages, have
That's right.
more recurring revenue, and ultimately the business sold for 4 times what her highest number was, and she didn't really do any more work.
That's right. So, name changing, separating the founder from the business itself, make sure the founder's not the brand. Nobody wants to buy your job. What are some of the other value drivers that you're a champion of, that you advocate for? What have you seen that's really driven the enterprise value?
It's hard to get here initially, but you have to have the majority of your revenue from recurring revenue. Those recurring revenue packages, and the more expensive and the more cash-based they are, the better.
That's right.
Buyers want to see that. So there should be membership plans. There should be email type membership programs associated with the company. You should look at your practice from the perspective of it being a club, and club members buy things. So I would say at a high level, you've got to be able to create a community. And it doesn't matter if you're one person or 20 people. I don't know the size of the average practice, but you've got to look at your practice from the perspective of a community. And I've got to share a story because there's so much value in this story. I don't want to name names, but when my son was born, he had some issues, and one of my close friends was a chiropractor. And anyway, my son had issues, so we found this doctor that only dealt with babies, and had a practice that if you were over 2, you couldn't deal with this person. Me and my wife, because this doctor helped my son so much, we referred 40 families to this practice, 40. And my buddy, who was a chiropractor, was like, how the heck did you refer 40 families to them? You didn't refer to me, anybody. And I said, because they're crystal clear on what their business stands for. We heal babies. That was their catalyzing statement. So answer your question very directly, people have to know what your business stands for, because that adds a component that you cannot buy with advertising. It's called referability. And referability is born from all of the things that we talked about: having something separate from you, crystal clear set of values, plans that people can buy into because they understand it, full alignment with your purpose and your catalyzing statement. and what I just mentioned. So that catalyzing statement was really cool. Now the other person who was mad at me did everything. Oh, we do
Yeah, we
necks,
do that
back,
too.
this,
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't refer him. I didn't know how to refer him. But so referability is the invisible underpinning of what makes one company more valuable than another. The only reason why Apple is worth $3 trillion is because of referability. Their cost of acquisition of a client is a fraction of everybody else's. And I'm giving you words that you probably never hear in a normal podcast, things like permanence and referability, because when at the end of the day, what do you really want? You want clients to come to you because someone told them to come to you. That's how Apple works on the high end, and that's how the baby doc works on the low end. It's all the same principle, referability.
Yeah, I love the expression that your brand is not what you say about your business. Your brand is what your community says about your business. So what do people say when they say you should work with Rick Sapio, you should go to the Remarkable Practice, right? So what do they, what is the dot on the other side of that? Because they, you've got to create that you got to codify what your value is so that somebody can articulate it back to somebody else. They can't just understand it when you say it. They have to be able to turn around and tell others how, what you did helped them and added value to them. So Rick, to wrap up, let me just ask you just blind spots that you see that owners going into a sale of their business. What are some of the shock and awe moments that you've seen where it's a blind spot where the owner just didn't see it coming and, help them, mitigate that exposure, if they have a runway here to their own exit?
Yeah. So you and I, we're speaking two different languages, and I want to just lay it out there. The way I approach the world first is from the soft side of things that are very hard. I like to objectify subjective things. How do you take a subjective value and objectify it so that you're making decisions from it?
Mhm.
You have to do that in business. It's really hard. So every time you ask the question, I kind of zoomed out to what are soft things in most people's eyes. And what most people are looking for is, Stephen, give me the answer. Like, what's the tactical thing I must do every day? But it's not that. That is a manifestation of getting all the soft things right: the purpose of the business, the values of the business, the catalyzing statement of the business, the philosophy of the business, the things that you're going to make decisions from, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're flipping me to the tactical side, the shock and
So
awe. So
just rest
yeah,
assured that this audience lives in that space that you just described.
okay.
So you're in a very warm audience we live in exactly what you just described. And now as it hits the ground from the tactical place, you won't be losing anybody from, there'll be no language barrier there.
Yeah. So some very simple tactical things that make businesses more valuable. Is that the question I'm answering?
Yeah.
So
I mean, you've been in enough of these deals where you've seen, people get derailed because they just didn't understand something about how to prepare themselves or their business for exit.
yeah, so there's so many. I could talk for 3 hours about this, but I'm going to zoom out a little bit and say, when your business has to be separate from you, you have to be on a base salary and a bonus system, just like your employees. What completely kills value of businesses is when, it's my company, my name's on the door, I'm paying myself the profits in the business. No, I've always paid myself as an employee of my business, just like Steve Jobs did. And in fact, when they called him back, I think the press said that he worked for $1. But um, there has to be uniformity in how you pay yourself and how you pay people, so that creates a better predictor machine. All this, the things that destroy value and or create value, is you have to have top shelf vendors when you're preparing your company to exit. The very best lawyer, the very best accountant, the very best broker, if you're going to hire a broker. So those are some things to think about. But it's this, my brain, maybe it's my engineering brain, I'm not sure, but people have a hard time with uniformity. But I'm the owner. Like I should be able to take money out of the bank and buy a house with it. I don't agree with that. I think that you have to respect your business. whether or not you're a chiropractor and your name's on the door. And that business has to be a living, breathing, separate entity from you. If you recall back in the day, I spent a lot of time on stages talking about Superman or Superwoman syndrome.
Yeah.
And Superman or Superwoman syndrome is when, you know, my name's on the door, we do things my way, and it destroys value. You have to subjugate yourself to the higher entity, which is your business. It's very hard for people to wrap their head around you. I never met Steve Jobs, but I would be willing to bet that he felt like he was subjugate to Apple and pushed Apple up. And people that have great businesses are that way. They are an employee of the business. Right. I am an employee of Mutual Capital Alliance. So I know I may be frustrating you, Stephen, because I'm not answering the question directly.
No, not at all. It's all gems. Are you kidding me? This is all gold, Rick. It's great.
Yeah. So that was those. Are we? If we're going to the finish line now, I would end on that point that your business is bigger than you. Your business was created to serve your clients. Your business is not you. And if you think it's you, then you're not going to have a remarkable exit.
Rick Sapio, gang. Rick, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for all you've done for chiropractic and for the remarkable practice doctors here today. Appreciate you, brother. God bless, man.
You're welcome.
Please stick around for more business insights from this week's bonus interview with our remarkable success partner, dedicated to helping you more successfully help more people. Enjoy.
All right, everybody. I'm Dr. Chris, Coach Chris from the Remarkable Practice, and I'm excited to host this segment of the podcast here today, and excited to have Justin Maxwell on with us from Big Life Financial. Big Life Financial has been a great success partner for several years, and let's just kick it off, Justin, with you giving us a minute to introduce yourself, tell our audience about your story.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chris. I really appreciate that. So my name is Justin Maxwell. I'm a partner in the firm called Big Life Financial. We're based out of Salt Lake City, but we work nationwide. We have clients almost in every state around the country. My personal story is that I came to a realization that my impact, my message, my calling in life had a ceiling if I didn't figure out my money. And so as I went through my money journey and learned how to save more money, how to keep more money, how to efficiently handle the tax situation, how to safely grow it, and how to create a bigger vision for myself, I eventually found my spot here. And that's exactly what we do for clients, is we help them figure out their money, figure out how to keep more of their money, how to get those saved dollars into assets, and really push into what type of impact are you looking for, and how can more wealth help you reach a bigger impact. And so my journey reflects the same journey we take clients on.
I love that for sure. I mean, we're huge on impact at the Remarkable Practice. Of course, we're helping others help others, and really our mission is to restore health. And we do that by helping chiropractic offices improve the ability to have impact. And you're exactly right. Really, it's the equation is more money equals more impact. Yes. And I love that part of how you describe that. So for the chiropractic office, give us a sense of what specifically do you help chiropractic owners with?
Yeah, so at a high level is what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring them a family office setting. For chiropractors that don't know what that term is, a family office is typically reserved for families that have a net worth of 200 million or more. So an ultra wealthy family. And a family office is a group of financial professionals that they hire specifically for them. So they're not moving around other families or other individuals. They're that family's financial professional team, from accounting to investing to insurance to estate planning to business exits. They're all on the same team, and they're only working for that family. Now, our goal is to provide them those type of services in the exact same way, just for them. So most of them have the potential through the TRP systems, what we've observed, to really scale their practice and get good, solid systems in it, so that they're increasing the value. They're trying to bring more money in. They're trying to create more value. there's a lot of financial pieces in there. There's tax, there's investing, there's insurance, there's protecting it, there's thinking for the estate. So what Big Life Financial does is we provide them with a platform of professionals that can help them in all aspects of that, that are all collaborating for them. So they're not getting conflicting advice. They're not getting random things from my financial advisor, which is different from my accountant, which is different from my insurance person. Everyone's speaking the same language, and everyone's trying to work for the betterment of the chiropractor and on their journey towards that impact that they're looking to make.
And I think that's such an important thing that our profession can use. Thank you for bringing that. Thank you for being a success partner with the Remarkable practice, because we really do coach remarkable practices, and we all need this sort of help. I know that, in poking around on your website, good information on there. And one thing that stood out to me was this 3 key elements for financial success. And some of what you just talked about, planning, tools and products, execution, are all wrapped up in there. So tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you guys help in all aspects of that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, correct. It is very much because the financial industry is just chock full of differing opinions and differing advice, and you should do this, you should do that, or this is the type of path you should go on. So it can cause confusion, but the confusion we find is that people don't take action on anything, or they'll meddle in things, but they could get a lot deeper with it and have a lot more value from it. But because they're worried, because they hear that there's something else that they might be potentially should be doing, they don't actually dive in, and it costs them money. They're losing money by not diving fully into a strategy or motion. So we help plan to help them choose the products and selections that are best for what their plan is, and then help them execute it so they can actually get the full value out of it instead of just sort of getting value or getting some value, but not enough.
That's great. That's really congruent with what we see in the profession at large, is that I think there's a great opportunity for impact when CEOs choose to go deep with a certain system that they know is the right path for them, instead of spreading themselves thin and learning a lot about a few things, or a little about a few things, several different options for people. And I just think what you're saying is like, hey, let's provide some clarity for this. Let's provide a system, and this is a thing that a person could follow without with professional service that doesn't have that person grasping at all sorts of different shiny things.
Correct.
So that's good. So what does that look like from you guys? If a CEO is listening to this and we're saying, okay, what kind of an ROI could we expect by investing in the system or products? I know you have several things, but talk to us a little bit about that. How does one engage with you, and what kind of a return can a person expect?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think the easiest way to highlight that, this is just one aspect of the business that's really powerful, that I think is a nerve that will resonate well with the listeners, is a lot of your chiropractors, specifically as they're implementing the TRP systems, are going to increase their business revenue, which increases their personal revenue, which also comes with the effect of now you have to pay more taxes. But the issue is that a lot of chiropractors start in a place where they need a middle-class accountant. An accountant that services mainly middle-class individuals, but their growth is going to take them out of the middle-class representation, but their accountant can no longer service them to the best of their ability. It doesn't mean that accountant sucks at their job, or they're a crappy person, or they're purposely manipulating you or being too conservative. It's just that their focus is middle-class people. And so one thing that you probably will have to do is jump up a level to a non-middle class accountant. And we like to use the phrase a generational income, because you've moved into a generational income type of a level. A lot of the doctors over their career are going to make probably 15 to 20 million dollars, and some are going to make 20 to 30 to 40 million dollars. That's not middle class wealth. That's not middle class income, but their professionals are going to treat them just like they treat all their other clients, which is very middle class. So you have to have a non-middle class accountant, and we offer that for people. So the ROI around that is that you're going to have a very strategic plan around the way that you plan, around the way you do taxes. So it's no longer you wait till the end of the year, you provide them with all your documents, and they tell you what you pay. And then maybe they say, well, we could have done this or that. but it's already too late. You already missed out the opportunity to save the taxes. So it's on the other side of it is we're proactively planning quarterly through the year so that we can hit that end. And we've already done all the tax strategies. We've already done everything, and we know what we've done to lower our tax bill. So the ROI on that is that happens year after year after year. The average business owner pays about, the data ranges, but usually it's around per $250,000 of income. It's probably in the ballpark of $12,000 a year extra in taxes if they don't plan. So if we can help you keep that 12,000 and then drive that into assets, either back to your business or into other assets, now you have not only saved the 12,000, but you've turned it into something. So the ROI is hundreds of thousands, it's millions of dollars extra in your portfolio when you reach the end, which again, driving back to this whole conversation we've been talking about is that's 100,000, hundreds of thousands, millions more to give you the permission to go leave a bigger impact, to help more people, to see more people, to how can I expand my business? How can I get into charity more because I have this extra cash and now I can part with it because I already have everything else covered. So it's all about driving towards that impact, but the ROI of tax planning is massive, and you can't stay with a middle class accountant if you're going to rise into higher impact.
Yeah, man, you spoke about that at our CEO cocktail hour last immersion that we had, and that really struck me as like what a great message for our practices, what a great message for our CEOs, because it's really congruent again with what we teach as far as if you really lean into experts and then execute, you can shorten the time window on the results that you're going to get. And that's what I'm hearing you say with that. Man, when we shorten the time window on us getting financial return on tax savings while we increase the service level and the income of our business, that's a huge benefit. So I love that. And you've talked to this somewhat. You really have that mindset on what's next. And that's what we want to keep our CEOs focused on is, yes, we're important in guiding our teams as far as what's important now and what's important next. And when we think about our own business with what's next, man, tax planning is just huge for that. And I think you've really addressed that well. So let's give people the opportunity to connect with you. What's the best way for our listeners to learn more about you, to get in contact with you, or to take the next step with Big Life Financial?
Yeah, so if they're like, I'd like to learn more and I want to kind of vet this out a little bit more, there's two avenues for them to do that. Number one is go peruse the website, like you said. So www.biglifefinancial.com. We have lots of resources, blogs, informational articles that you can read just on who we are, our approach, and more importantly, like what is our vision for our clients? Because I think we try and hit that really heavily on the website. Other ways is I have a YouTube channel that I hit a variety of topics. Sometimes it's tax, sometimes it's insurance, sometimes it's more investing related or business exits and business building, just all things finance, that they can start to get a sense of who I am and is this someone I vibe with, or is it, because though I am not everyone in our company, the people that I feel like I represent the type of person that they would be working with in our company. So you can find that at Max Wealth Preserve on YouTube. And I can get you the link for that. But that's a way if they weren't like ready to jump on the calendar and like, I want this now, but they can check things out. Those are two ways. If they are ready to move into like, I'd like a consultation to see if you can help me or not, and this is something that vibes with them and they're interested in that, they can go to www.biglifefinancial.com/TRP, and it'll allow them access to my calendar.
That's fantastic. So the YouTube channel, the website in general, and then if people are ready to take action, and of course, everybody, we encourage people to take action. Success is reserved for the action takers. Go to www.biglifefinancial.com/TRP for a special availability to your calendar for our users there.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much to you and to Big Life Financial for being partners. This is exactly the sort of success partner relationship we create. We curate those of you that we get to be success partners specifically because you bring high value to the Remarkable Practice community and to our culture. Thank you for allowing us to keep our eyes on what's next financially, because none of us particularly are trained in that. That's why we lean on you guys as the professionals. Any last words you want to say for people before we wrap today?
The only last thing I'd like to say is, if you choose to stay status quo as you're building your wealth and as you're building your business, you're choosing also to basically put a ceiling, and I like to identify the ceiling as a middle class impact, because you're not being systematic about it, you're not being purposeful about it, you're not actually seeking it. But if you choose to step into, I have something here and I'm bringing a ton of value here and I'm making a ton of money, I'm going to give myself the permission to push past that ceiling and start thinking bigger. You can push into a lot bigger than you can even see the possibility of today, because you've given yourself that permission. So allow yourself to go there. Don't stay status quo on the way you build your business, on the way you handle your finances, on the way you do taxes. Choose to push into what really successful people do, and what really successful people do is implement systems. And that will give you the permission to leave the generational impact.
I love that, guys. That's what we're looking for, right? Anyone who's on this, who's listening to this, is looking for a generational impact. Thank you for providing us an opportunity to step into that from the financial space. Really appreciate you for being here and your support with the Remarkable Practice.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chris.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.